Welcome to Vitamin B with Mohana. This is where we help you take control of your well-being. My guest today is the well-known gynecologist Dr. Aruna Muralidhar. Today, we are going to be talking about periods and menopause, two important phases of any woman's life. Dr. Aruna beautifully explains three important aspects. One, being how we can effectively manage it. Two, what foods really work. And three, very importantly, what are the lifestyle choices we are really making? And ultimately, she dispels any myths and disinformation around these two topics that are nowadays surrounding all of us.
The menstrual cycle is a beautiful thing. To be honest, we should respect our bodies for that, all women. It's not that they shouldn't be exercising through the period. Even during the period, these things must continue.
Interesting.
And you rightly talk about some pelvic exercises, right?
So what's going on? 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds are getting their periods. I could not imagine this, and all around that things are changing. Why is that happening?
So food, again, a very, very important aspect of menopause. Right?
Yeah.
Sleep, again, a lot of sleep disturbances in menopausal women.
Why is menopause not even understood? People don't even know about it. What's the taboo around it?
Ultimately, it comes down to three things. One is eat, right? Okay, move, which is, exercise and sleep, right? So eat, move, sleep. And these ovaries are the ones which are producing estrogen, which is giving us the skin our glow, the bones its strength, the heart its strength. And this estrogen carries on till, menopause, right? The hair in the underarms, the hair around the private area. So these are all signs which appear a couple of years before the period actually starts. I'm seeing people with premature menopause, which is premature menopause is below 40, and early menopause that's below 45. I mean, there's no harm in taking painkillers when you really need it. And I proudly proclaim that for the last 7 years I've been a Cupvert.
One thing that I have learned over the years is what you do outside of those, let's say 7 days on an average, the rest of the month, what you do actually helps you take care of your bodily pain. It goes away actually.
In general, women can be infected with HPV at some point of time in their life. Backbone changes, a lot of weakness around the backbone, the ligaments and the bones itself. Well, the libido might vary again, but having said that, I have had women who had a better libido, a higher libido just after, during menopause or around menopause. It happens. But when you look at a sanitary pad, it's so white, it's actually bleached using chlorine bleach and stuff, right? Talk about menstrual cups, I say that they are rash-free, right? They're rash-free, definitely. They're trash-free, and they are almost cash-free.
So come join me as we get deep into these topics and learn deeply as well. Sit back and relax, and I'll see you at Vitamin B with me, Mohana. Hi, Dr. Aruna. Welcome to Vitamin B with Mohana. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure too. And very good morning to you.
Thank you so much. How are you feeling today?
Well, I mean, I'm looking forward to a nice Sunday.
I think the weather's changed. It's gotten gloomier. So this important topic that we're trying to sort of engage in becomes so much more relevant for us through all the changing seasons. But it's a pleasure to have you here. So what's going on with you, Dr. Aruna? What are people coming to you for, in your space?
Absolutely. So because I'm in the women's health space for nearly 23 years now, being an obstetrician gynecologist and having worked in the United Kingdom as well as India, I can sort of relate to the entire spectrum of women's health. Currently in Bangalore, in a private hospital that I work in Cloud9, I see women, adolescent girls from about 9-10 years of age till 80s and beyond. So I see a lot of geriatric population as well, which means beyond 65, and at the same time I see adolescents. Most of my work is around high risk pregnancy and obstetric critical care. But having said that, I'm a gynecologist too, so I look after the entire spectrum of women's health.
There's so much to learn in this space, right? So I'm really eager to have this conversation.
Yes,
I want to start, doctor, where where it matters the most in our life, right? Where the first important change in a woman's life, which is her puberty. And we'll engage in that a little bit in different aspects, because a lot of the audience has shared with me that they have specific questions, which I also want to sort of indulge in conversation today with you. So what's going on? 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds are getting their periods. I could not imagine this, and all around that things are changing. Why is that happening?
I know. I mean, I see a lot of anxious parents, coming and talking about how their young girls who are not even able to manage their daily sort of chores, even just out of, let's say, not even able to do their spellings or writing and all that, and they're already showing signs of having a period in a few years' time. For example, what the changes which happen a couple of years before the actual period. For example, a little bit of breast development, the hair in the underarms, the hair around the private area. So these are all signs which appeared a couple of years before the period actually starts, and that's really worrying. And it's not difficult to imagine the kind of let's say difficulty in explaining things for the parents themselves. So I think it's very important to inculcate these little conversations and be open about it from a very early age. And yes, it's like in the 18th century, for example, women used to have their first period at 18 years of age, right?
Wow.
And over a period of time, that has declined. I mean, I had my first period when I was 13, and at that time, I was probably one of the, let's say, middle sort of range. There were some girls who had attained their puberty even after I had, right? So, and of course, now I see young girls who are just about 9, 10, having their first period and struggling with it. And parents struggling with it. That's a time that, they wouldn't even expect it. Although now everybody seems to know that, these are changing.
But why is that happening, doctor? What are the reasons?
So, Mohana, this is a sort of a multifactorial thing. We can't point out to one single problem, but it seems to be related to a lot of environmental factors, lifestyle factors, and also stress-related factors, right? So, and also, as you rightly said, this is a window of opportunity for us to intervene, right? Adolescence, that is 9 to about 19, that's a window of opportunity. But having said that, another big window of opportunity that we all have, especially, those in women's health and obstetrician, is when the little girl is in her mother's womb, right? So as a fetus growing in her mom's womb, what she's exposed to also matters in terms of her future health. So that's another window of opportunity that we can help improve outcomes, right? And then, of course, the first 1,000 days of a baby's development, right? So these are two windows of opportunity, and then the adolescent comes in. And what we do and what kind of interventions we do in adolescence will dictate that girl's future health, right? So it could be just lifestyle, for example, not getting much activity, physical activity. You start seeing these girls 5, 6, 7 years old putting on a bit more weight than they should. Lifestyle, eating, let's say, crisps or
junk
and cokes and all these fizzy drinks, etc. Things like, all these, I don't want to name anything, but obviously burgers and chips and stuff like that. Also stressors like environmental stressors. I'm talking about pollution. We really don't know what we're breathing in. We don't know what we're drinking. For example, things like, BPA and bisphenol A, which are all plastics, right? So just drinking from a plastic bottle or drinking from a plastic lined little paper cup, the so-called paper cup.
Oh, wow.
These are all endocrine disruptors. When I say endocrine disruptors, they have these chemicals which mimic or very similar to hormones, which go and sit on the hormone receptors and then change the way the endocrine system works. And that itself triggers an early puberty. So there's like a lot of stressors, a lot of pollutants, and we really, it's very difficult to point out a single thing, but these are all emerging, sort of evidence which is coming
It's really sad because, and it's good that we're talking about it, doctor, because it's not just about this topic. Plastic, xenoestrogens that are emitted for all kinds of diseases these days, right?
Polycystic ovarian syndrome, cancer, of course, and many other lifestyle problems, like all these, non-communicable diseases. So somewhere we've got to, sort of draw a line. We need larger studies of the population to see, how we can sort of curb
absolutely.
this.
And one of the other things, doctor, that I was watching another podcast where another expert was sharing that there's so much of sexual stimulation on TV.
Yes.
And apparently that also has an indirect or probably a direct effect on how you're developing faster.
True, absolutely.
Because you're stimulating those hormones as well, right?
So, and also sleep. I mean, as an extension to that, the way the little adolescent or pre-adolescent sleeps and the kind of sleep she gets also matters. Because, you need that sort of an uninterrupted, restful 7 to 8 to 9 hours sleep for a growing little girl. And if that's interrupted, let's say late night, parents don't realize that. Late night movies, and especially when it comes to weekend, they really don't bother about when their child goes to sleep. So I see a lot of parents indulging in late night movies, taking their children out for late night, parties, etc. And at that point of time, the circadian rhythm just goes out of the window, and that itself can stimulate a lot of things. And just having dark curtains and not letting any light come through will help melatonin, which is a very important hormone secreted by the pineal gland in the brain. That helps a restful, restorative sleep as well. And if it's any Netflix or any light, any video in the room may disrupt the melatonin production.
Wow, I'm just stunned. This is so complex, right? Absolutely. We're not realizing what's going on and what's going to hit us ahead.
Yes.
But let's talk a little more about periods itself, right? This is something that, every girl gets hurt, to a certain extent, because you have jokes being made, or you're on your periods. Your mood is off. You're pissed off. You're getting anxious for no reason. And there's so much going on in your body, but there's such little awareness, right? It's actually brought down to a joke many times, and I have been joked on as well. Oh my God, you have your period, right? And I think I speak for all women around us. So now we have taken it in our charge to let people, or let your spouse or your partner know that, hey, listen, I am going through, something.
Yes.
I have my week ahead. You prepare yourself, But what happens to us? Tell us what happens when a woman is going through a period, physically and emotionally.
So let me start at that tender age when the girl may be having her first period, was getting ready for it. Of course, many schools are taking it in their stride to educate them. As soon as they get into their 5th, 6th standard, there is some sort of reproductive health session for them, right? So I have done several in many schools, right? But having said that, I think it's important, as you rightly said, it should not be seen as a taboo. And I think is making small little groups. I think the teachers must encourage that, having little groups with girls talking amongst themselves about what they're going through, because just being open about it may help those girls, feel more confident about their bodies, right? Because I remember I was just shooting up. I was having a growth spurt at that time, and I was the tallest girl in my class, and I looked long and lean like a palm tree, literally. And I didn't have any shape at all, right? And it was later that I had some sort of, shape coming in. So I was ridiculed. I was called all sorts of names. I was very much into sports. So, people thought that, this girl is completely different from many others. But all the other girls had nice curvy bodies and stuff like that. So, it's a matter of body image. It's important to talk about it. There may be many in your, similar sort of boat, and just talking about it makes it much more easier to cope, right? And then coming on to later on, yes, it's important for partners to understand that it's not easy to go through that surge of hormones. And there's a huge change. The menstrual cycle is a beautiful thing. To be honest, we should respect our bodies for that. All women, we're endowed with a beautiful little womb, and that expands to what, accommodate 10, 11, 12 kgs, if somebody's carrying twins. And it's the most wonderful neonatal intensive care unit in the world, because a baby born early would have to spend time in the NICU. So we've got this lovely uterus, which expands and really helps us bear children. Then they're like lovely 2 little ovaries on both the sides. And these ovaries are the ones which are producing estrogen, which is giving us the skin our glow, the bones its strength, the heart its strength. And this estrogen carries on till, menopause, right? So that estrogen is extremely important for just keeping us healthy. Once we start getting depleted stores, that's when we realize how important estrogen has been for us. And ovary also has a job of releasing an egg every month, right?
So that's the period cycle, right?
Yes. So the cycle is orchestrated in such a manner. Of course, the brain, the pituitary, sends the signaling, which is through hormone. That signal goes to the ovary. The ovary signal then goes to the uterus, and then that's when the the lining sheds. So literally, once the egg is released, about 14 days later is when the lining is shed if there's no pregnancy, right?
Okay.
So 14 days to the ovulation, 14 days to the period.
Got it. Yeah.
And the reason we have a surge of hormones and the way we feel just before a period is because the first 14 days is estrogen rich. The second 14 days after the ovulation is progesterone rich. And this progesterone is what makes us feel absolutely crappy. It slows our system, it slows our digestion. It doesn't our stamina, even if runners like me, I notice the second half of cycle, I'm not having that kind of stamina as compared to the first half of the cycle, right? So it doesn't let you release glucose as quickly as in the first part of the cycle, right? And then, of course, progesterone makes you feel a bit dull. You feel very emotional. The same movie we watched in the second half of the cycle, you're more likely to be tearful. An emotional movie, for example, right? So that's the progesterone doing all that. And some women do have a lot of other symptoms like bloating, depression, feeling anxious, low in mood, sleep disturbances, etc. in the second half of the cycle. And if that's happening every month for about 6 cycles, we can label that as a premenstrual syndrome. Right? So PMS. So PMS is not uncommon, but some women are very good at managing their cycles, but some women are not. And again, this need not be the same the entire
for everyone,
for everyone, or the entire duration of periods, right? So when you look at the number of periods one has, let's say it starts at 10 and you go on till about 50, you've got about how many years? 40 years, 14 to 12, right? So you've got that many 480 cycles in your lifetime. And managing those periods can be different at different phases, right?
Of course.
So all that adds up, and it's
so typically you have about 2 to 7 days of a period cycle, right?
That's right.
So the PMS, as you called it, premenstrual syndrome, happens a few days before, or maybe even a week, up to a week before, and that's where the fluctuation of your hormones happen, where progesterone kicks in, is it?
Yes, the progesterone kicks in immediately after the egg releases. And that builds up, right? So when that building up happens, that's when most symptoms appear.
Understood. Okay, got it. So, but there is a lot of pain. There's all kinds of things along with emotional fluctuation. Your body also is taking a toll, doctor. But one thing that I have learned over the years is what you do outside, of those, let's say 7 days on an average. The rest of the month, what you do actually helps you take care of your bodily pain. It goes away actually if you just do a lot of asanas, you take good care of yourself. So how do we actually manage our health to ensure that we are not that much in pain? Are there things that we can do to take good care of ourselves?
Absolutely. I think that's a very important aspect of how one can manage their periods and period pains and bloating and everything else. One is, ultimately it comes down to 3 things. One is eat. Right? Okay, move, which is, exercise and sleep, right? So eat, move, sleep, right? So that's the mantra. So when you talk about eat, you've got to look at timely meals and mindful eating. So no matter what you eat, you have a certain staple diet which you're used to, right? I'm not a great proponent of changing that diet very much. You can stick to what you're used to, what you've been, growing up with, right? But when you eat it, how you eat it matter a lot. So just sticking to those times and eating, sort of chewing mindfully and assimilating it matters. And I do see a lot of children and even grown-ups watching telly, while eating or conversing or, just walking around and eating a very quick meal. So when someone gobbles up food, essentially the assimilation is not happening. The nutrients don't get into one's system, right? And a balanced food. And I always talk about a smart plate. We're talking about half the plate of greens and veggies, and they really help with PMS as well, right? Half a plate of greens and veggies, quarter plate protein and quarter plate carbs. Right, just taking to that. Lots of hydration, especially during the time when one is having the flow, right? So about 3 liters in general, but about 3.5 liters during the periods, right? So you've got to compensate for the flow as well, right?
Got it.
And then, of course, coming to move. So when I say move, I'm talking about what one is able to do consistently. I see a lot of women who are consistent for a little while and then they go, go off it and then come back to it. So this sort of fluctuations of phases of exercise really are not going to be very helpful. And also similarly, if someone is having, say, polycystic ovarian syndrome, if they do high fidelity exercise, for example, just getting their heart rate very high up, the high fidelity, like let's say the
HIITs and things like that.
That's not good for someone who's having PCOS. So again, the exercise has to be fine-tuned to what that lady requires, that woman requires, according to her body mass index, according to her waist circumference, what are her background sort of issues that she's had, etc. Right? So yes, a proper amount of good, consistent 30 to 40 minutes of exercise every day, which should include 20 minutes of aerobics, 20 minutes of core weights and balance exercises, right? So and then sleep, right? Now again, sleep, I see so many women having sleep disturbances, whether in pregnancy or outside of pregnancy. A lot of sleep disturbances. Menopause causes sleep disturbances. Adolescence causes sleep disturbances.
It's so crazy.
Pregnancy causes sleep disturbances. So, it's important to understand your sleep hygiene. So having a particular time to go to bed, getting up on time, a particular time really, and having that restorative sleep. How are you going to be able to do that is completely up to you, because you've got to figure out. And then we've got these lovely watches nowadays which tell you about how your good your sleep has been, and what's your sleep score, what's your stress score, etc. So I think it's important to rely to a certain extent, although they're not extremely sensitive. To a certain extent, you can rely on them and then get your sleep hygiene sorted. So if you're doing this throughout the month,
important things,
three important things throughout the month, then automatically you'll be able to cope with the period better, and your PMS may be much lesser. And having said that, it's not that they shouldn't be exercising through the period. Even during the period, these things must continue. And you rightly talked about some pelvic exercises, right? So any exercises which improve the blood flow to the pelvis and reduce the congestion, help with the muscles, sort of relaxing the muscles, flexibility, like simple butterfly pose or the Bhadrakonasana, or things which help the circulation. So we're talking about anything which, for example, pelvic bridge, right? The pelvic bridge and the
even Sukhasana, just to sit,
Sukhasana.
It makes a difference,
Absolutely,
doctor. I've tested on myself. When you just sit cross-legged, and that's what our ancient Indian wisdom is all about, right? They used to tell us things to do it regularly, so automatically it takes care of your overall health.
No, I mean, it's only when you start doing them will you realize how inflexible we are, unless you're doing it on a regular basis. You take one or 2 weeks break, you won't be able to get back to the same sort of flexibility, right?
So true, No, I love it. So eat, move, and sleep. I love the mantra. So I just want to ask two important questions. I have also taken painkillers for many years, right? So you go over the counter and you pull out a painkiller. How good or bad, and how much damage does this cause?
I mean, there's no harm in taking painkillers when you really need it. Let's say, a pain score of, let's say, a pain score of, let's say, 1 to 10. And if somebody is having a pain score of more than 7, right, on a regular basis during their periods. I mean, less than 7 can be managed by just what we talked about till now. Even, simple hydration and doing all these walks and pelvic exercises can help. But once it goes above 7, I think it becomes a little difficult to tolerate. Then that's when, yes, we may take painkillers, but ideally they need to be prescribed according to your, previous history, your allergies, etc. So it's preferably, at least the first prescription must be with a doctor's guidance, right? And then over the counter wouldn't be a good idea. But then having got the prescription, one may take that about 1 to 3 times a day following a meal, because some of them are just antispasmodics in the sense that it reduces spasms. Some of them are painkillers, right? So some of the painkillers can cause acidity. They can cause over a period of time acid buildup. And if they're taken over abused, then they can even cause kidney damage.
Yeah, I hear you
kidney
get silent
damage,
heart
right?
attacks as well. So,
Not to the extent, but kidney damage is a big worry,
okay,
right? So if someone is not hydrating themselves well,
sure.
having these painkillers on a regular basis, you've got to
It's
look
not
out
good.
for,
Yeah.
watch for your kidney health, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just, I wouldn't say over the counter. I think it's important to be prescribed.
Yeah.
And again, there's so many different types of painkillers. So depending on the kind of pain, for example, some women have pain building up to the period. And then once the period starts, it kind of reduces. Some women have only period pains.
And at first day, there's severe pain on first day.
Yes.
Maybe that needs just
Especially.
some short attention, right?
Yes. So that could probably just be overcome by some lifestyle, right? But there's a red alert here. One of the red signs that we want to watch out for is if it's a new onset pain, and they haven't had pain at all, but now over the recent few months, they're having the pain building up to the period, or the periods themselves are becoming painful and more painful over every time.
Yeah.
Then that's something that needs a gynecology review.
Okay. Okay. Because you don't know whether you have cysts and so many other issues, right?
It may not just be simple period pain. It could be something else which needs to be examined.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. The second important thing that I wanted to ask you is, what is the worst and what is the best, okay, in terms of just your period care health? You have cups, you have pads, you have tampons. So I'd love your candid, honest opinion on this. It can really help many of us.
Absolutely. So menstrual hygiene can be managed by one, of course, the well-known pads, right? The second thing is the period panties, which are very much in vogue nowadays. The third is the tampons, and the fourth are the menstrual cups, right? Now, all of them have their own pros and cons, whereas the pads and the tampons are very convenient. You use them, you throw them, and that's it. You don't have to worry about it. But I have been a strong proponent of sustainable menstruation, and I really would like your audience to understand how important it is to think about not only the eco-friendliness of your sanitary options, your choices, and also what kind of harm they can cause. Right? So sanitary pads are fine, convenient, easy to use, and sort of conventional, right? But when you look at a sanitary pad, it's so white, it's actually bleached using chlorine bleach and stuff, right? And the kind of absorbency that it comes with it. They use material like what are used in tires, styrene and things like that, right? So the gel pads, the foam, the gel component is the one which soaks up the blood, right? Is all full of chemicals. So
and
when
it's
you
got
take the
plastic
layers,
in it, right?
Yeah. When you take out the layers of the sanitary pad, you understand how much of chemicals go into it, manufacturing.
Interesting,
right? And that is going so close to your body, right? And not only chafing of the the inner thighs, but also getting soaked and causing the odor. They can lead on to vaginal infections. They can lead on to the bacteria from the back passage to come into the urinary passage, causing more urinary infections, right? So ultimately, when you look at it, it's a whole lot of chemicals causing issues with your body, right? So I certainly am not a strong proponent of a sanitary pad. Having said that, what's the option? Cloth pads, right? Again, cloth pads are available in so many different styles. They're made from banana fiber, made with just cotton, and there are so many layers, to soak up, right? So they can be used for avoiding leaks when one is using a menstrual cup or just the way they are. Period panties, again, cloth based and something natural. So they can be washed and they're very eco-friendly, obviously. Sorry. And coming to tampons. The tampons again are similar to pads, right? A whole lot of chemicals and they're going right into the vagina, right? And if one forgets to kind of remove, I've seen a lot of
I have forgotten
women.
Also, doctor.
I've seen a lot of young women who've just forgotten. And they can land up with a very bad infection called toxic shock syndrome. Not only that, various other vaginal infections which are very difficult to treat and very dangerous. Now coming to menstrual cups, and I proudly proclaim that for the last 7 years I've been a Cupvert and a Cupvert as well. So
Yeah.
Cup Expert and a Cup Convert.
Nice.
So once I mean, of course, this is like learning sort of
how to use it,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But they're extremely so. When you look at those cups, there's so many different companies, brands available, and they cost as little as 250 rupees to about 800 rupees.
Yeah.
And you can use one cup for nearly 8-10 years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, depending on what you feel about it, but they can be used for up to 8 years.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the cost savings from buying all these sanitary pads, and you're just using one cup all through, right? And they're like essentially silicone. So all the medical equipment, like the cannulas and the urinary catheters, they're all made of silicone. They're inert to the body.
Yeah.
They don't cause any chemical reaction. And it's just going and sitting in the vagina, collecting blood. It doesn't soak in blood, unlike the pads. So when it just collects blood, there is no connection. I mean, there's no contact with oxygen or air. So there's no odor. Yeah. So it's a nice, tight seal. And I've been running, I've done half marathons, etc. But even during period, I can run very comfortably.
Okay.
So it's indeed a liberating feeling using a cup. But one must try and understand how to use it. Yeah. But once you use it, of course, some people may find it messy initially, but ultimately it's your body, right? And you're not sort of, dealing with someone else's body, but you're dealing with your own body. It's just a matter of hand hygiene and putting it in, removing it when you feel it's full. And you get some signs. You get some, signs of a little bit of bubbling sensation, etc. when you know it's full. And all you have to do is go to the toilet, empty the cup, and put it back in. Yeah. There's no question of sterilizing the cups or again washing it with soap and water while you're on a period, right? And period blood itself is so kind of lubricating that you don't need any external lubrication to put it in. Yeah. One must not try to put it in when they're not on a period, because that can be painful.
That's painful, yeah, that's right. So this is really helpful, because I think it's a safer replacement to a tampon.
It's sustainable. So when I talk about menstrual cups, I say that they are rash-free, right? They're rash-free, definitely. They're trash-free, and they are almost cash-free. So you've got all these advantages.
Actually, that's true. It's very well said. I love it. It really is a procedure, though. You need to learn it. Back in one of the organizations that I was leading the talent charter for, we had called someone who's actually doing it like an NGO, given cups to everyone. We asked men to take cups for their women as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of awareness. We don't know. And she talks so much about the waste that the entire world is actually producing through pads. But I think the marketing around these products have made us think and lean more towards pads. That's really the tragic part, right? Whereas I think the
awareness is improving in urban areas because of all the the social media. But then again, back in the rural areas, they still resort to using pads. Of course, they're making a big sort of let's say not come back, but they're there, in the rural areas. Whereas earlier they used to use cloths and then
sand. Apparently, it's so sad, right? Like in a lot of it's just a matter of class, right? In the sense that there's no access to things, so women are using sand, and it's really, really sad. Even today in India, as we speak, and that's what this lady was saying, that it's so tragic that we are living in extremities, right? That you have tampon usage on one end without thinking through, and then women are struggling like this the other end using sand.
I know of women using cloth, which again, they don't wash it in the right way. Even when we use cloth pads, it's important to sort of, essentially soak it in water, get rid of all the blood, and then put it to the washing, and then sun dry it. Sun dry it so that, because we know sun and can be a good antiseptic.
Yes.
So it shouldn't have any moisture, because again, moisture can cause infections. So that's a brilliant way of managing periods.
I love it. I like, when I look back at our conversation this far, I really like eat, move, and sleep, right? I think that'll continue for the rest of the conversation as well, as we move towards the latter part of a woman's life. But before we touch upon menopause, which a lot of people have asked me to ask a lot of questions around that, let's talk about HPV and why it has become so important for us today as women and people to understand this a little more.
Absolutely. No, this is a very important topic. So HPV is human papilloma virus, right? It is there, it's everywhere, right? And in general, women can be infected with HPV at some point of time in their lifetime, right? And it is sexually transmitted. So when we say sexually transmitted, it doesn't necessarily have to be, the PIV, essentially that kind of sex. It could just be skin contact.
What is PIV?
So penis in the vagina. That's
Oh,
what
okay.
I meant, right?
Okay.
Or it doesn't have to be necessarily that contact.
Yeah.
Even the perineum, the skin around the private part,
Okay.
coming in touch, contact with each other can also cause HPV infection.
Okay. Wow.
Similarly, oral sex can cause HPV in the oral cavity. Anal sex can cause HPV in the anal cavity. So HPV is essentially sexually transmitted through various types of sex.
Okay.
And depending on how the sex is happening, it can be in the mouth, it can be in the vagina or the anus, right? And HPV is the causative factor for 99.99% cervical cancer.
Yeah,
right?
This is the thing.
And what is cervix? Cervical cancer is nothing but cancer originating from the neck of the womb. So the womb is there, and the womb has a neck, right? So that's neck of womb is called cervix.
Sure.
And then, of course, that is connected to the vagina, right? So cervical cancer, causative factor, HPV. More than 99.99%, right? But again, not only does it cause cervical cancer that most of us are worried about, it can cause penile cancer in men. And in fact, men are more vulnerable to HPV, catching HPV. It can cause anal cancer, it can cause oral cancer, oropharyngeal cancer, and it can cause warts in all these areas, right? So warts are not cancer. Warts are not cancer, but they're ugly to look at. The skin tags like things, and they're ugly to look at. And that's through HPV as well.
Sure.
So now coming to HPV itself, it looks, when you look at the electron microscope picture of an HPV virus, it looks so beautiful. It's like a beautiful flower or blossom, right? But then that's what's causing all this trouble. And there are several types of subtypes. So the ones which cause cancer are a few, but there are so many other subtypes which don't cause cancer, but they cause warts, right? So against this cancer causing subtypes, there are vaccinations. Right? So before I talk about vaccinations, I also want to say that HPV can come and go. It's not like once a woman contracts HPV, she's just stuck with it and then it'll invariably cause cancer. So please, I think that's a myth. And
that's really helpful, doctor.
Yes, absolutely. So HPV can be there at one phase of life. And then, we usually, when we check for the HPV virus, that's one of the tests that we do, right? We check again in about 6 months to a year. And it may very well have gone by then. She would have got rid of the HPV. How does one get rid of HPV? By being active, lifestyle, avoiding multiple sexual partners, avoiding smoking, having a good hygiene, avoiding putting on too much of weight. All these matter.
Interesting.
Right? So HPV can come and go. But when we talk about primary prevention, we've got to look at vaccination. What is primary prevention? Not getting the HPV at all, right? So this is by the vaccination. So nowadays, all over the world, 9 to 13-year-old girls get HPV vaccinations. Right?
And for older women, is it up to 45?
So this is a stipulation. So 9 to 13, you get your vaccinations done. It's 2 shots, 0 dose and 6 months. And you're done. For lifetime, you have a protection against HPV, although it's not 100%, it's almost about 90%. So it doesn't mean that somebody who is vaccinated need not have cervical cancer screening later on. They must continue to have their pap smears regularly. Right? Then suppose they haven't had it by 13. Up to 25, they can catch up. Up to 25 years, they still can have the vaccination in order to give the same almost the same sort of protection. Now coming to up to 45 years and even beyond. There's nothing like a 60-year-old or a 48-year-old should not have the vaccine. Right? There's enough research that it's very helpful.
Interesting.
Now, they can have the vaccination either against the 4 main cancer-causing subtypes or the ones which is nonavalent, which is against 9 subtypes. But you can still take the vaccine even if you're in the 40s or 30s or whatever. So I particularly vaccinate all my post-pregnancy ladies, right? Once they come for their 6 weeks check after delivery, they come in at 6 weeks, and one of the things that we talk about is the HPV vaccination and the cervical cancer.
Because what is spread wide now is that by 45 get it done. So people are like panicking a little bit and going and getting
Not by
it.
45. They have to get it done much before
but then
that.
we didn't know, right, doctor? A lot of people actually they're not aware.
They're not aware.
Yeah, they're not aware they should get it done, And a lot of people don't go to doctors. I can tell you a list of my friends who don't have gynecologists. So the awareness of what is essential, right? And unfortunately, because all of these lifestyle changes are happening. Culture has changed. It becomes more important now to know and talk about
the government is taking it up, very, very as a big priority. And hopefully, we'll have vaccinations rolled out through the government soon. And I'm doing my bit on, all the social media that I'm on about awareness. And I talk to, we have these little brochures to give out. So I give it out to literally every person who comes into my OPD. So, but then, yes, that's important. I think it's very important for our adolescent girls, 9 to 13 years old. Please get the vaccination done and dusted, because that gives protection. And this is a very safe vaccine. It's highly effective, doesn't cause any side effects. The only side effect would be probably a little bit of injection related pain, but very safe vaccination. And it's been very well studied.
Great. I think this is really eye-opening, actually, especially the 45-year cap for me personally as well, to understand that. It's really great. So let's move. How are you feeling at this point?
I'm fine, thank you.
We're going to go into a mammoth of a topic now that a lot of people are very keen on. So, doctor, you on a daily basis, you were sharing right at the start that you're looking and talking to women. They come and consult you across age groups, right? Why is menopause not even understood? People don't even know about it. What's the taboo around it? And people who want to talk today are facing a lot of resistance also. And what I see is that it's such an interesting point, right? 2 times in a woman's life where, say, you become a team leader, right? Which you've gained about 5-6 years of career experience in a corporate setup, let's say. It coincides with you getting pregnant. The second time, when you have the so-called empty nest syndrome, that is, your children are big, older, they leave. Maybe you're also older, you're single today. It's not necessary you have to be married, all of that. But that's the second time life gives you an opportunity to actually lead very big roles in organizations, or you take those chances in your career. Then menopause hits you. So what the hell is going on, right? Like, for a woman's life, you're always
being a woman.
It's not easy. It's not at all easy.
And the career woman
on top of that. And someone who's struggling through understanding this itself. So why are we not talking about it culturally a lot more?
The first point is regarding the pregnancy and how career can get stalled because of pregnancy. I did things simultaneously, and I really strongly recommend women to do things simultaneously. You can't treat pregnancy as a disease, as a big burden or a big responsibility. Treat it like a normal physiological event which is happening in your life, and get on with it while you're working. I encourage women to work until the due date, really. So why set one thing back for pregnancy? I still don't understand the point. Unless one is having a very complicated pregnancy, in which case things are different. So please do not divide the two. They can be done simultaneously. I did my MD and MS and went to the UK. I had my children there, and nothing. I mean, of course, I had my maternity leave. Obviously, I didn't kind of leave a infant at home. But having had my maternity leave and all the maternity benefits that I get in the UK, thanks to the UK government, but I got back to work. Having made some adjustments. So please do not separate the two. Secondly, you rightly talked about menopause and how a woman is likely to be at the really acme of her career, and at that point of time, empty nest syndrome, relationship problems, carer, you may be a carer to your in-laws or parents, etc. So a lot of things are happening in your life, and work stress is building up. Right nowadays, many a times we're kind of literally imposing it on ourselves to work stress, But anyway, having said that, I don't think nowadays menopause is sort of not getting its due, importance. Many are including you, are talking about it and increasing awareness, and that's great. That's a kudos to your job. But earlier, what women thought was, yes, you just have to go through it and suffer through it. And to be honest, I've had women in my families who've had major issues. And there are women who didn't have any issues at all, smooth sailing. Right? So I think these are all things which can affect one's career. Like, for example, you're in the middle of a meeting and you have a major hot flash, and then you really don't know what to do. You've got to excuse yourself, and all the other head to toe symptoms which can affect your health. But yes, there are ways of dealing with it, and it's important to, at workplace, at clubs, at corporates, or even societies and communities, it's important to have these menopause groups just to talk about it.
Right?
To talk about it. I think it can be a hilarious session, people can share some very hilarious, experiences and make it, fun, and at the same time, very confidence building sort of exercise.
Yeah. No, I think it's really important to talk about it, even more so, doctor, because again, menopause is hitting women earlier now.
Yeah.
So is it the same set of reasons, or what's going on?
Now that's an interesting aspect to it. Menopause in India is anywhere between 46 to 48 years. That's a sort of average age when a woman may hit menopause, 46 to 48.
Okay.
Now, having said that, I'm seeing people with premature menopause, which is premature menopause is below 40, and early menopause that's below 45.
Wow.
And I'm seeing the other spectrum where women are having later menopause, 55, and still having their periods.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So that 55, 56, so they're still having their periods. And that's when we start worrying about, whether everything is okay. And we start,
that's also not a good thing.
Right. Well, a late menopause is also not a very good thing, right? So essentially, the average seems to be 46 to 48. Okay. But you're right. I mean, early menopause is a big problem. Just losing eggs from the ovary, that's a big problem, ovarian reserve, and that leads to a lot of fertility issues as well.
Yeah.
And that's another big, anyway, let's that another Pandora's
topic,
box,
right?
By itself. Yeah. So that's what I would say. So it could be either early or late nowadays. And it's important to understand that there is a transition. So how this transition happens is also something.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. So I have just a question to clarify. Let's say when it was my grandmother, my grandmother woke up one day and she said, at least that's what she told me. She said, I didn't know anything. It just stopped. My mother suffered a lot, right? I have friends who are suffering after menopause also. So it's unreal what's going on. It's not clear at all. But is it true that my grandmother could have had it in her 50s? And is it true that it's become lower now? And will I get my menopause when my mother got it at that age, or my grandmother got it at that age?
Yeah.
Is that
generally
true?
It correlates? Yeah.
Okay.
So now that's a question that I ask all women. At what age did your mother have her menopause?
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So many a times it would have been a hysterectomy, in which case nobody would know when the menopause actually happened. But it generally correlates, right?
Okay.
But having said that, there can be a very wide variation as well. Genetically, that's how it sort of correlates.
Should work, okay.
Yes. Okay. There are women who have hysterectomies where the periods just stop.
Yeah.
But then the ovaries are still continuing to work. So usually when we do a hysterectomy, we may not knock off the ovaries as well. The ovaries are still producing estrogen.
Yeah.
So they may still be able to tell the menopause symptoms even if their uterus is out.
Okay.
Right, with the hot flashes and things that can happen later on.
Sure.
So it's important to understand when one's mother underwent menopause.
Okay. Yeah. And compared to, like, let's say my grandmother who had it in her 50s, overall average has decreased to 46 to 48. Has that happened, you think?
No, I think the average has been approximately the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And doctor, nowadays I have seen more conversation about perimenopause, right? So tell us about perimenopause.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have asked me very much to ask a direct question. Does that phase mean you cannot have a good active sexual life as well?
No, yeah. So perimenopause is the entire sort of, peri means around, right? Pre is before and post is after, right? So this is simple. Perimenopause is the time about nearly 2 to 5 years before the actual menopause to the time 2 to 5 years after menopause and even beyond. So it's a huge spectrum. It's a very broad spectrum.
Okay.
And women can be fortunate enough to completely have a very smooth perimenopause, have their menopause, which is, again, it's important to define these terms, and then a post-menopause, which is fine, and then it becomes rocky for some other reason. Or there are women who have a very rough pre-menopause, have a fairly okay menopause, and then a smooth post-menopause. It could be very variable. Right?
Sure.
So it all boils down to what is premenopause, what is perimenopause, and what is menopause. So menopause, firstly, is the complete cessation of periods for a whole year. So one must not have had a period for a year. Like, for example, a woman has had a period last April and hasn't had any periods now. It's October. Till next April, we can't say that she's gone through menopause.
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
So it's important to have that 1 year of no periods. That's important. Then coming to premenopause. This premenopause can be up to 2 to 5 years before this actual cessation. And that is the time when estrogen is slowly depleting. So when you think about, a petrol tank full of, fuel, as the car goes, it keeps slowly depleting, right? So it doesn't suddenly drop, right? So this slow depletion of estrogen is what causes all the symptoms around perimenopause. Premenopause rather, right? So it could start with just feeling low, fatigued, for no reason fatigue, ab tak theek tha, then suddenly you start feeling a little fatigued, and odd sleep disturbances, right? So if we want me to talk to the symptoms right now,
so so basically, doctor, what you have helped me understand is perimenopause is before, during, and after.
Yes.
But when you see internet, right, I just want to have like a very honest conversation. It just says it's 8 to 9 years before your period. So there's so much of wrong information out there, right? So perimenopause is typically understood as a phase before the menopause.
No, that's premenopause, right? So peri is around, right?
Interesting.
So it could be postmenopause as well, right? But menopause and post as well, right? So peri is around, right?
Sure.
So premenopausal is when the estrogen is depleting. So one may start feeling symptoms from head to toe. So when I start talking about all the symptoms from head to toe, it's important to understand. It could be just a feeling of, fuzziness in the brain fog, suddenly, missing things or forgetting names, etc. Hair fall, right? A lot of dry skin, obviously wrinkling, losing collagen in the face, right? Losing collagen in the breast, changes in the breast. More nodularity in the breast could happen, and that's important too for breast screening as well. Feeling weakness in various muscles, joint pains, etc. Then coming to the heart health goes a little low, because estrogen has been keeping your heart strong, and then one who's going through menopause, the heart may not be that strong, and that's when cardiovascular disease sets in. The cholesterols may go up, the numbers may go up, right? So it's very important to get some lifestyle changes there. Then coming down, abdomen, a lot of bloating issues, having constipation issues, things slow down a bit. Coming down further into your reproductive system, obviously the ovaries do not produce as many eggs and good quality eggs, so fertility is gone. And having said that, a woman till her menopause may still may get pregnant. So one must use contraception till they've gone through the entire 1 year of menopause, right? So pregnancy can happen at 40s and 50s, right? Then coming to, as I said, the eggs are not being released. The uterus obviously is not strong enough to hold a pregnancy. Then coming to down below, the vagina may be drier. Sexual, problems, dryness and pain and burning and irritation. Also, the weakness of the pelvic muscles. So when one coughs and sneezes, one may have leaks of urine, accidents before going to the toilet, urgency, etc. So urinary bladder itself kind of, because of the, absolutely, the estrogen deficiency makes it a little more weaker. And the neck of the bladder, right? The bladder control may become weaker. Similarly, and then coming down further, the pubic, of course, hair loss, etc., changes around the private areas. Again, muscle pains and cramps, etc. Changes in gait and gravity. Backbone changes. A lot of weakness around the backbone, the ligaments and the bones itself, and osteoporosis and osteopenia. So when I say osteoporosis and osteopenia, it means that the bones, which were really strong in producing new bone cells, the new bone cells are not getting produced, and the older bone cells are getting, destroyed. So essentially, this is leading on to a lot of bone mineral density changes. So the bone mineral density comes down. That leads on to osteopenia, which is weak bones, and osteoporosis, which are weaker bones causing easy fractures. Right. So one might feel that their backbone has, so they might lose a little bit of height and having a little bit of, humpback, etc.
And this is just pre-menopause, or this
no. I'm sorry. I'm not. Let me again come back to it. These are all estrogen deficiency changes, and it's a spectrum. So initially it may not be this severe. Osteoporosis and humpback come much later, almost 5-6 years into menopause, into post-menopause. But I'm just talking about the entire spectrum. Pre-menopause, it could just be hot flashes, cold sweats, changes in the mood, and changes in the skin, etc. But when we're talking about serious lifestyle changes, for example, when we talk about lifestyle changes, we're looking at 5 things. One, is the mental health, right? We're talking about dementia, Alzheimer's, and all that. These are all, I'm talking about much later in the spectrum.
Okay.
So dementia, Alzheimer's, which affect the brain, heart diseases, cardiovascular disease, and angina, and MIs, etc. I mean, heart attacks, etc. Third is the bone health, which is osteoporosis, osteopenia.
Yeah.
Fourth is the kind of symptoms which come through the bladder and that sort of thing. Fifth is cancers. So we're talking about cancers being higher in incidence later on into menopause and
so basically, all the symptoms that you talked about subtly begin at premenopausal phase, and they could become that extreme post-menopausal.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But again, all these are the spectrum which can be intervene. I mean, we can always
manage
intervene.
it. Yeah, when we talk about that,
and that's where menopausal health is a huge science in itself. And that's why I encourage all women, once they go into their, of course, every stage has its own special tests, but once someone has crossed 40s, there are a whole gamut of different tests. So I see women just going to a lab and getting all sorts of tests. And these may be relevant, may not be relevant.
Sure.
But there are some specific relevant lists of tests that premenopausal or menopausal women should undergo.
Yeah.
And they don't have any clue about that. So they just get a random checks done. And then when they come back to me, then I have to give them a different set of tests.
Yeah.
So it's important for a woman to understand that every stage of life, they have a different set of tests
also to
which should be done. Right?
So from our audience, right? I mean, thank you for sharing that, because I think these symptoms are known by many people, that you have hot flashes, your bodily memory changes, your physical strength to your emotional capability, your memory, all of that actually starts changing, doctor. What about your number of people have asked me that as a couple or somebody who's sexually active, what do they do? How do they actually manage this pre-menstrual to post-menstrual phase itself?
Premenopause
to post-menopause phase itself.
Once again, the kind of symptoms that one faces in terms of sexual health can be variable, right? Once the estrogen deficiency happens, again, this is a spectrum, right? It may be fine initially, just requiring a little bit of lube, but eventually it might become, to a large extent, difficult, right? So one is, again, pelvic floor exercises, improving the circulation to the pelvis, right? And just talking about it, right? I mean, a couple needs to be very open with each other.
Yeah.
Intimacy doesn't just necessarily mean sex, right?
True.
And there's so many other aspects to intimacy.
Yeah.
So it could be, a good, satisfying foreplay, or it could be masturbation, or it could be, just any other kind of stimulation, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be sex in the way that, we think of it, right?
Yeah.
But again, lubrication can help. Pelvic floor exercises can help. Talking about it can help.
Sure.
Changing positions can help. So I think a couple can, figure it out through their,
And it doesn't mean you stop. Like, for example, if you're going through menopause itself, you don't need to stop.
Well, the libido might vary again, but having said that, I have had women who had a better libido, a higher libido, just after, during menopause or around menopause. It happens in pregnancy.
So many
as well.
misconceptions, right? So it's nice that we're openly talking about it.
Yes.
And post menopause also, people can be sexually active.
Absolutely,
right?
They can enjoy a sex life. As I said, intimacy is of different types. Just hugging, fondling, caressing, kissing, anything. The stimulation can be of different types. And just talking about it, and or there could be other sort of stimulation in terms of, if the libido is low, they could probably watch something together, or just change the way they the place that they're in, etc. There's so many other things that they can do.
Because what happens is, even men are not aware, right? A number of men might think that, okay, there is a certain thing called menopause that's happening, maybe we don't even explore, right? So it's very important to change our mindset.
The problem is that women think it's only them who have a lack of libido. There are lots of men who are having issues with libido and even, erectile dysfunction much earlier. And probably a little more during their 40s and 50s. So it's not just the women. It's always a combination. And even the libido, or rather the need for the sex drive, can be variable even in couples, normal couples. So it's important that, one may have a higher libido at one point of time.
Yeah.
For example, a woman is ovulating, she may be having a high libido, but expecting something from a husband who's really tired and come back at 10 p.m. in the night. So, this is always a matter of something which causes discord.
Yeah.
So it's important to talk about it and explore options so that, there's no conflict there.
Is there male menopause?
No, well, that's what I was just mentioning, right? So I wouldn't say it's a menopause because there's no estrogen in a male's body.
Yeah.
But having said that, the testosterone does vary, and they do produce sperms all through their life. Unlike women, women have a certain reserve of eggs, but progesterone is produced all through the life. But again, life stressors, life factors, caring for elders in the family, empty nest syndrome, brain fog, dementia. These are all things that even men
have.
I mean, the same thing holds for men. For example, high risk of cancers, higher risk of cardiovascular diseases, high risk of diabetes hitting them, cholesterol, and changes in their libido. It's a real thing. It's a real fact that they have to contend with as well.
And that's so interesting, right? A lot of things are assumed, and there's a lot of assumption around, the cultural aspects need to be overcome with the right information, doctor. So now that we really understand, right, what are the symptoms, etc., how can women take care? Like, what do we do to take care, from foods to health? Is it the same formula during your periods that you do during your menopause? Because I've seen women struggle a lot also.
Yes. I think, yes, eat, move, sleep is a mantra over all of your life. But the first thing that a woman who's reaching her 40s or, mid-40s must understand is get a health check. Go to a gynecologist who knows her job, who knows what menopause all means, right? So it's important to start there because, as you rightly said, there's so much of misinformation, disinformation, malinformation around. Okay, and it's important to know that misinformation is just misleading you. Disinformation is, wrong information, and malinformation is which is harming you. Right. And this is important for all of us to understand. So when you have malinformation, it's very dangerous.
Amazing,
so first thing is to go to a menopause specialist who can tell you about what's happening. And first of all, just being aware of it makes a huge difference. And preferably, I expect the couple to come along, right? Not just the lady. It's important for the husband or the partner to be there because life is something that you're leading together, and it's important to understand each other, right? Even pregnancy, all my antenatal appointments are with the couple, partner, and that makes a huge sense of satisfaction, and it's important that both of them are in the game, right? So similarly, a menopause consult, and then doing the right kind of test, because you need a baseline test, right? You only have a baseline, that's when you know the trend.
So which is why it's also personalized, right? The solution for a menopausal person is very different for each of them.
So this lady, I can see a lady who's just been completely all right. Her pregnancies have been fine. She didn't have any issues during her pregnancies, no diabetes, no thyroid, nothing. Nice, normal weight, being fairly healthy, does all her household chores. And she's a lean body weight and with no family history of anything, right? This lady will need a completely different set of, care, right? There might be a lady who's obese, she's in a BMI of 40, morbidly obese, right? Has had difficult pregnancies, right? Or already has diabetes, high cholesterol, blood pressure issues, and a very strong family history of cancer, is a smoker. This lady would need an absolutely different kind of sort of care.
But if you were to generalize and say two things that all women can do during their menopause to take care of themselves.
One is, as I said, this first check. So at least that will tell you what's your vitamin D, what's your sugar, what's your cholesterol. And according to that, I would like to tailor make their, interventions. So that's why I said these are the two ends of the spectrum. So this lady who's completely normal may just have to do eat, move, sleep. And in terms of move, there's a slight variation, right? So when we talk about exercise for menopause, we're still talking about that 30 to 40 minutes at least 3 times a day, 3 times a week, which is 120 to 150 minutes a week, right? Moderate exercise, of which about 20 minutes are aerobics. So it could be swim, it could be a cycling, or it could be a treadmill, whatever, right? Plus 10 minutes of weight bearing and 10 minutes of balance. because these women need more balance, more, small weights, etc. Because as you age, both the bones are becoming weak and the muscles are becoming weak as well. So there's something called muscle, wastage.
Okay.
So the muscle wastage also has to be battled.
Got it.
Right? It's not just the bone health.
Yeah.
So that's why balance and weight makes a huge difference, right? Plus, an addition of yogasanas for flexibility and breathing exercise.
So physical exercises are what you're saying is contributing mostly to care during menopause, right?
Absolutely.
And I think you can't, I mean, you can, I guess, but it's best to start before. Keep it as part of your life, right? At the end of the
those
day.
who are not being consistent with it, they have to take this as a major priority during menopause. Because lots of things may make them inconsistent, but now it becomes a huge priority. And hoping that, of course, they may be caring for elders, but if the children are out, on their own, then I'm sure people can find time
for themselves.
Right?
And are there foods that aggravate
Yes.
and make things worse during your menopause?
So, as I said, the exercise should have balance and all that. Coming to food, there are some, natural estrogens, right? So, other than keeping your balance of half a plate of greens and protein and all that, the protein ideally have to be plant-based, and the plant-based protein includes soya. So, a lot of soya bean, soya milk, soya curd, or tofu, or soya chunks can help because they have a whole load of natural estrogens.
Okay.
Antioxidants, huge boost.
Sure.
What you talked about, amla earlier on, and all these antioxidants, curcumin, which is turmeric. So all these are antioxidants and can help them battle cancer or against cancer. So food, again, a very, very important aspect for menopause. Right? Sleep, again, a lot of sleep disturbances in menopausal women. So good sleep hygiene, getting some yoga in and towards the evening, having a chamomile tea or something to relax them, and getting a good amount of sleep also matters a lot for the menopause.
So essentially, the biggest takeaway is a combination of three things, which is eating right, moving a lot, and moving correctly with different phases of your life, and sleeping well throughout your life. Right? Yeah, great. So, doctor, in conclusion, right, as we come to the end of this beautiful conversation, I have learned a lot, very honestly. I'm like stunned with a few things, right? And I know you're a Cupvert, so that's also good to know. What is your message to people about post-menopausal life, right? Are there misconceptions that we should know about? Like, what's your take on the whole thing?
Yeah, post-menopausal, well, now post-menopausal life is probably equal to premenopausal life, right? Because the lifespan is increasing, right? I mean, earlier we used to have, let's say, 60s and 70s. Now we've got 80s and octogenarians and nonagenarians walking along everywhere. So I think geriatric health and geriatric healthcare is again a big space nowadays. In the US and UK, it's been there for a while now. India is also in the same boat almost. And hence, like home care services and all that matter a lot. It's a huge gamut of its own problems. But if a woman has to sort of look after her all through life with the right mantra, I would say she should aim for fit at 40s, strong in the 60s, independent in the 80s, and nimble in the 90s.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Right? So fit in the 40s, strong in 60s, independent at 80s, and nimble at 90s. So for this, it's a lifelong process. One must be committed to their health. One must be having some sort of discipline and commitment to their health, and prioritize their health. I think that's the most important thing, because nowadays people don't prioritize their health as much. So that's what I've got to say.
Wow, it's amazing. So thank you so much for spending time with me and teaching us a lot of important things as well. I think there are a lot of key messages that can help men and women and everyone around us. So thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
I did. I always enjoy such conversations, and Mohana, you've made it so much more easier. Thank you.
Thanks. It's beautiful. Yeah.